Hello and welcome to another BlenderWiz video tutorial. In this tutorial, we will create low poly rocks, water, and trees. The main concept behind this tutorial is using textures to replace topology. We'll use Blender Internal to generate the normal map for a rock. Then after the rock, we will work on creating water from just 4 vertices using normal maps. Instead of generating the normal map ourselves, we'll just use the normal map from the open source game Yo Frankie that was created a few years back by the Blender Foundation, and then we will also use textures from that game on the trees, with the bark and the leaves. Finally, after we finish creating these items, we will link them into our scene. Okay, let's begin on our rock. So, don't delete the default cube, we're gonna use it as our rock. Let's throw in 2 loop cuts like so, and a third one there. And let's get rid of that vertex there. That little trick that I used, you can use these buttons here, but it's hitting Control Tab and it will allow you to select different elements of the mesh. Vertex selects direct vertices. Edge allows you to select edges, and face allows you to select the faces. And of course, if you hold down Shift and click another one, it will select more than just one. So now we can select faces and edges. So it's pretty fancy. And if we do that again, we can select individual vertices, well, like so. We can select edges, and we can select faces. So it's a pretty handy little trick. Just a quick tip. So now let's go ahead and make this rock a little bit more circular. So select these vertices like so in the corner, and then hit S, Shift, Z, and that will scale it in along the X and Y axis, but leave out the Z axis. So there we go. We have pretty much a cylinder there. But one major difference is that instead of having a circle or an n-gon cap, we have 4 quads. So now what we want to do is we want to take these guys here, bring them down. Let's bring these ones down here, scale them out a little bit, and basically make a little kind of a domed shape here. And now what we want to do is, since this is way too perfect to be an actual rock, hit O to bring up our proportional editing and set the fall off to random. And let's just pull pieces out like so. And just kind of yank this around, get some good shapes going. You kind of want to have this go in like so. And just pull these around. And a little bit of rotation is fun. Gives us some nice faces. So at this point, we have a rock, sort of. Let's fix that rock piece there. That's a little bit too jagged. We have a basic rock. Not bad, not great, and it's quite low poly. I'll pull that out again. It's quite low poly, only about 25 verts. So that's no problem for our game. But this wouldn't look very good just going directly into the game. So what we want to do is we want to use a normal map to make this look smoother and like it has more topology going on. To do that, well, we're going to need something to get that topology from. So we're going to need another object. So first what I'm going to do is I'm going to rename this low poly rock. Not ploy. Poly underscore rock. There we go. And then duplicate that. And let's rename this rock high poly rock. Like so. And this high poly rock, we're going to go ahead and give a multi-res. And let's just click subdivide a few times. Not too many times, because it could very well just crash your computer if you go too high. So right now we have 360 vertices on this one. We can take it a little bit higher if you want. set the shading to smooth, and let's pop into sculpt mode. I'm gonna switch the type to these clay strips because they're kind of fun. We can just pull this around, make it look more rocky and less smooth. And then the normal map, what it's going to do is it's going to generate an RGB image that takes these rays and bounces them off of this high poly mesh, and then using our low poly mesh, it will actually tell the light rays that are hitting it to bounce off differently, so that it acts like it has more topology than it actually does. And this will kind of trick the brain, because basically all 3D is how things are shaded. This isn't actually a 3D image, it just looks 3D to us. So if we can adjust how the light is hitting our faces, it will look like it has more topology. So once you're happy with how it's sculpted, get out of sculpt mode. Let's unhide our low poly rock here. Let's turn off proportional editing. And what we're going to do is we're going to scale this guy. Actually, we don't have to scale it, I don't think. But we do need to bring in a UV editor. Well, we need to do two things. First, we need to unwrap this and create the seams. So, well, let's bring in our UV editor first. I'm getting ahead of myself. So, if we tab into edit mode, there is absolutely nothing in here. If we tell it to unwrap right now, we get this kind of circle pattern, which will work, but you're going to get some distortion here on the bottom panels here. So let's go ahead and unwrap this. So mark a seam here, and it'll rip it in half. And that'll just keep everything a little bit better together. And that should really work just fine. I mean, we can try breaking it some more. See if you can get it really good looking. And I think that'll work. I think that'll work pretty well, actually. So, what we need to do is now have Blender generate that UV image for us. So, with our thing here selected, I don't think we need to unwrap this. We may need to unwrap this one. So we should probably look at how we unwrap this. We got two things going off there. Let's hide that. Select the same vertices and unwrap it the same way. Fairly important that we do it this way. So, yeah, they're the same. So that's good. Now what we need to do is we actually need to create a new texture with this tabbed into edit mode. And let's call this, I don't know, multi-res normal. And just click OK. That'll create a new texture that we can use. And now what we're going to do is tab out of edit mode, open up our bake panel here in the render tab, switch the bake mode from full render to normals, check bake from multi-res, and then just click bake. And that should have actually done something. It doesn't appear to have done anything. That's no good. Well, we need multi-res there. Oh, well, that's curious. That's very curious indeed. Come on, Blender. Try it again. Did I really not do anything? Well, in the case that it's acting funny, we can just apply that, and it will get all of these vertices, I guess. And then we can we're going to bake it slightly differently. We're going to use the other selected to active. So select our thingy here. And then, well, the light color is the active mesh, and then the darker orange is the selected mesh. So select your outer guy first, I believe. Actually, no. I forget how we do this. Shoot. Let's try this. It doesn't work. Yeah, we need to tell it where to go. So make sure that this is going to our multi-res normal map. And then let's try that. And we get all these polygons. Very nice, very nice. Fantastic. And of course we want this to be as close to the same size as possible. So let's try that again. Well, we're getting these funny colors down here. Normally it'll look something like this. And you can see here that we kind of get these little shapes underneath that are acting kind of like the surface of this rock here. So now that we have this, let's go ahead and save this under our directory. I'm just going to call it what it's already called. So the normals low res. Or, yeah, that should be good. I usually like to end it in NRM or normal map and just save that image. Okay, and now let's give this this guy a material that we can use. So let's call this one rock and give it a, well, we can leave the specularity up for now. Let's also, so that we can actually see this texture apply, let's set the display to GLSL and set it to textured. Now with this current lighting, it's not going to be very easy to see. So let's duplicate that light and maybe bring it down. I don't know, something like that. And I'm just going to bring in a Hemi lamp because I like Hemi lamps. Okay. So now that we can see all of the edges and sides of our rock here, let's go ahead and give it that texture. So I'm going to name this texture, maybe, I don't know, normals, I don't know, something like that. And set the type to an image and just grab our multi-res image. Now notice how it looks really weird. It's all just plastered right on like a painting. It's just plastered right on the face there. And that's not what we want. So how to fix that? We just come under here, under mapping, change the coordinates to UV, and suddenly it's just wrapped all over our little rock here, which is exactly what we want. Now, it's the wrong colors. It's purple. Not what we want. We want it not purple. So what we do is we uncheck color and we check normal. Now, notice how broken this is. And how to fix that? We just check normal map. It's still all broken and choppy though. So let's set it to smooth shading, and that should help fix it. Although it didn't look like it did. Well, that's a bit interesting. Just play with these, maybe. Well, that's the best. And really, this will be fine. It looks higher poly than it did before, but once we actually use our texture, a color texture, let's bring in that color texture. So, I don't know, rock color. Bring in our image. Open that. Resources, rock, and then our color map. Of course, remember to set it to UV. That'll stop all the weird stuff going on. It'll look better. And if you still think that this looks fairly low low resolution, just turn up the size of our texture here. So maybe 2 by 2, and it'll look better. And now what we're going to do is we're going to use GIMP to turn this image texture that we're using into a normal map that will then cause this light that's reflecting to only reflect in certain areas. Using GIMP, we can very easily generate a normal map from a standard RGB image, such as this one. So just come up to our filters, come down to map, and click on normal map. That's not showing up, but it's right there. Okay. So I don't know if you can see that very well, but in there, in that little window, guess we can't expand it, it's a normal map. And I don't really like the 4 sample map for some reason. I prefer the 9x9. I don't really know the difference other than 9x9 gives quite nice results. And of course you can bump how much the normal map has an effect, or how tall these cracks are. And so I'm just gonna leave it there. And remember, if you do boost the scale too much, we can always adjust the influence in Blender. So I'll just leave it there. And there we go. Now make sure when you go to export this that you hold down Control, Shift, and E. So this will export a new one, and without, it'll give you a chance to rename it so that you don't accidentally erase your color map. So I'm just going to rename this Rock Sharp Normal, and we'll export as a JPEG. I usually prefer .png images, but JPEGs are fine too. Now that we're back in Blender, let's go ahead and open up that texture that we just created in Blender. So bring in a new texture. Let's call this Rock NRM, just because it's normals, and set it to an image or movie, and let's open that up. So under Rock and Rock Sharp NRM. And of course we need to change the stuff here. So change it from we need to check normal map so that it's using the RGB values to be normal instead of whatever else they would be. And then we also need to change the coordinates, the mapping coordinates, to UV. And uncheck color, check normal. Now notice how the light is not reflecting how it looks. And that is because under the color map, we've actually adjusted the scale. So we need to do the same thing here. So adjust the scale to 2x2, and suddenly, voila, it's looks like the light is actually reflecting off the little bumps. So let's go ahead and actually play with this a little bit. Let's adjust the specularity down a little bit. It's a bit too shiny for a rock for me. Sort of like that. I'm liking this. It's looking fairly decent. And if we really want to adjust this more, we can turn on color. Oops, not under the normal map, under the color map, and we can adjust kind of how it looks. So there we go. While up close this rock doesn't look that great, remember that your character or your player is hopefully on their way through a quest, and they are searching for stuff. This was a fairly quick intro to normal maps and whatnot. If you play around with it, you're going to get much better results. I guarantee it. I think we have too much specularity still, maybe. Maybe too reflective. But anyway, yeah. If you play around with this, your results are going to look a lot better. And of course, as you keep playing with this, you'll get better and better, as with anything else. So, just play around with it, and make it look like a rock, I guess. Don't really know what else to tell you, other than have fun with it. It's your rock. See what you can do with it. We're going to go ahead now and start working on the water. So, what you could do is you could use all these vertices and a whole lot of topology to create waves, which looks good in an animation where the computer has a lot of time to sit there and render it. Unfortunately, in a game, we don't have that amount of time. So what we're going to use is actually just a plane with an animated normal map set to it. And how we could create this normal map is to use the ocean the wave, I think it's the ocean modifier. Where are you? So we'd create a high poly ocean, and then we'd overlay or place a plane right on top of it, and then just as we did before for our rock, we would just bake each normal, and then using something like GIMP, we would just tile all of those normal maps together onto one big sheet. That takes a lot of time, so I'm actually just going to skip that step and just provide you a texture. So what we want to do first is we want a new material. Let's call this water, and we can leave all of these for now. We want to make sure that our map is working properly first. So we click New. Let's bring in our image, and this is under water map. And well, we can't really see what's going on, so let's bring this up in the viewport. GLSL, and ta-da! Looks terrible. And that is because this is just being acted as this is just acting as a color map, which isn't right at all. So what we need to do first is we need to come here, not here. We need to turn on normal map, turn off color, turn on normal, and suddenly it looks quite a bit better. Now when we hit P, it looks terrible. Why is that? Shouldn't look black. Let's check the normals. And they're facing the right way, so that's curious. Wow, why are you doing that? Come on, Blender. Let's make sure that it's white. Yeah, it should look just like this. It should not be being weird colors. Oh, come on, Blender. Well, that's a bit upsetting. Yeah, no, we're right. We're definitely facing the right way. Come on, lamp. Are you being stupid? Yeah, maybe. Come on, don't make me look bad. Why are you black? Anyway, let's ignore that little bit for right now. So that's all working, but if we zoom in here, notice how there are all of these little creases and it doesn't look that great. In fact, it looks pretty bad at these little lines because they don't line up at all. And what that is because is this is just one massive animation. This is not meant to be placed like we have done. So let's pop in over at the UV editor. Let's turn it to textured, like so. And it's GLSL, so that's good. So this is all working fine and dandy. And what we need is we actually need to unwrap this. Let's first open up our water map here. Hit U and unwrap. Okay, fantastic. Ah, now it decides to work. I guess it just had to be unwrapped. So, it still isn't fancy, and that's because we haven't told it to work right. Also notice how when we play it, the water isn't moving at all. It's completely still. Actually, it looks kind of like snow. But, yeah. And that's because we haven't told it to be animated yet. So check animation, or animated here under game properties, and turn up the tiles because they're about 10 by 10. Oh. Don't lock up. Come on. Appears it locked up on me. They're 10 by 10. 10. Come on. It probably locked up. Sometimes it freezes the updates. Let's, I'm gonna pause the video and reload Blender and see if it behaves properly. Okay, so yeah, all I did was reload Blender and ta-da! look at that. It looks a lot lower res than we were anticipating. So, we hit P, still does nothing, and that's because we haven't given it an end value, which happens to be 99, and we need to give it a speed, and that happens to be 18. So if we hit P, ta-da! Would you look at that? We have waves, but they're incredibly low res. How do we fix that? Well, we can either go over to the mapping and turn it up, or we can just tab in here and scale it up 10 times in the UV editor. That didn't actually do what I had originally anticipated, so let's do it the other way as well. So we can go 5, 5, and there we go. There are our waves. So I will provide that texture for you. If you wanted, you could generate them yourself, but then you'd have a whole lot of work, because you have to make sure that they tile nicely along the X and Y coordinates, and you also have to make sure that it works through time as well. So you're dealing with 3 dimensions again. You just have X and Y and time instead of X, Y, Z. So a little more abstract, kind of fun, and this one works quite nicely. Now we actually need to give this an actual material. Not quite done yet. So how do we do that? Just basically turn this blue. Let's give it a fairly dark color. Water's a lot darker than people usually make it. It's fairly dark color. In a lot of animations and such, you'll pretty much make it black and then have quite a bit of specular. And let's just give it some transparency, and I'm going to set that to 0.7. And my computer is having a heart attack, it sounds like. Hold in there, buddy. So yeah, there is our water, looking fairly good. Pop that up. Can't really see the normals, but they are working, and there is water. We're going to go ahead now and start working on creating the trees. So, since there aren't that many great textures out there, I'm just going to borrow some of the textures off of the open source project Yo Frankie that the Blender Foundation did earlier. So I will provide links to those if you want them. If you have your own bark and tree branch texture, feel free to use them, but they take a while to make, so don't spend too much time, I guess. So anyway, let's begin working on our tree. This is going to be a fairly cartoony tree with little fake bends, so don't worry if it doesn't look like an actual tree. You just want to make it look good, or like a tree, I guess. So let's bring in a circle and turn down the vertices to I don't know, 12 maybe. This is going to be where the roots are. So we're gonna tab into edit mode here and just kind of move these around, pull them around. So you can turn on proportional editing, and we can just drag these parts around. That one's a bit too far out. And just kind of make it look rough. Maybe not that rough. Should still look somewhat like a circle, I guess. And then once you have something that looks kind of like that, select these vertices. Let's extrude them down and in, so that we can actually just plunk it right in the dirt. This part will be under the dirt. And then take these top vertices, let's extrude them up and scale them in, like so. And then, so that we can get away with even fewer vertices and faces, we're going to actually bring in another circle and set the number of vertices down to 10. Let's turn off proportional editing and let's scale that in. And just kind of line it up so that it's right up above the hole in our and our roots. So now we really just need to go along and connect all of these vertices. And obviously there's going to be some triangulation, so don't be afraid of the triangles. Because technically Blender is going to just turn these into triangles anyway, so right now I'm just laying out the wires. And I think this would go there, there, there. There. Do we have all these triangles now? Okay, and then once you have it kind of figured out how you want your triangles to go, just fill them in. A little crack there. Don't think that's going to help. And there we go. And of course you can smooth that out a bit. So if we do smooth, hopefully that works, and it did. We can rotate it and just get it so that it looks fine. So that's how you you can go to a much smaller set of vertices. So there we go. Let's just extrude this up, just bring it out, and make a trunk. And then I guess we can just rotate this and kind of bend it around. It's going to be a really tall tree. And of course, just like any other model, the longer you spend on these, the better it will look, and the better your results will be. So, I'm going to try to make this fairly quick. We're going to make a branch here. So, how do we do that? Delete those faces there, those three faces. Grab these vertices here, and then we just connect them up. Because we need more vertices in there, just because we need to make kind of a circular-ish shape. Doesn't have to be a perfect circle, obviously, but it does need to make up a branch. So now that we have those, it's time to start connecting everything up. So we start getting our faces. I'm gonna extrude this one out. It's a bit complicated. And now that we have our loop, just use the smooth vertices or vertex thing here and smooth it twice or until it looks fairly decent. I'm just going to kind of rotate it and scale it in. There we go. Then once we have that, we can just extrude it out. continue on. And since we're going to have to UV unwrap this, might as well set up the seam right now. So around that base right there, just hit Control E, mark seam. So that is where your seam will go. I'm sorry if you can hear that boat. It is being noisy. So anyway, let's make another branch. Another bigger branch maybe. And double tapping G, by the way, will move it along the, or it'll just do an edge slide, which is a pretty nifty tool. So I do recommend playing with that and seeing what it does. Let's make another branch here. Okay, once you have a tree that you're fairly happy with, you probably should have a few more branches than this, but don't go too overboard, otherwise it'll have lots of vertices. But yeah, so this should work. What we're going to do now is we're going to actually start creating the little branches that stick off of this, or not yet. Let's create the textures first. So what we need to do, we've already sort of started to unwrap it a little bit. Let's bring up a UV editor here. See what happens when we unwrap this. We get these weird looking things just kind of stabbing out of here. Not exactly what we want. So we're going to have to fix this, obviously. What it's doing is, because these are tubes, it's trying to unwrap them, but of course you can't unwrap a tube very easily. So let's fix it. Let's find a set of vertices that goes up the side of the tree, like these ones here, and just keep going. And this seam is where it's going to have a seam, or a visible seam. So let's just mark those and wrap it, and then that looks a lot better. This is our main trunk. We need to do that for the rest of the branches as well. For these branches, I recommend doing it on the top, because that's where our player is not going to be seeing them. So let's mark that seam there. Let's mark that seam there. And maybe that one. And maybe the other side. And then if we unwrap this, ta-da! We have branches. So let's see what we're doing here. So turn on our texturing. Ooh, I think we have a normals issue. Let's turn that back off. Let's set it to smooth first and just see if it's got some major normals issues. Not so much. They're all facing the wrong direction though. So let's have it recalculate those. Fairly simple. Now if we turn on texturing, it should still be there. And it is. Let's set our lamp to inverse linear. Didn't really do anything. Let's duplicate it and get another one on this side so we can see both sides. Okay, so let's get into texturing this guy. So we have our basic UVs unwrapped. Let's first go ahead and give this a new material. Let's call it bark. Turn off the specularity. And we're going to go ahead and grab an image texture here. And this is going to be the color map. So bark color. And then let's go ahead and open that up. So we're borrowing this one from the Yo Frankie project. And let's just open that up. And now if we look at this, it doesn't look that great. And that's because, first of all, it's huge. It's not fitting the object very well. Also, remember that it's still set to generated, which is still the UV. But yeah, we need to fix this. So how do we do that? Let's take our UV image here, and just rotate it, and scale it up. And now, the bark on this tree looks much better. However, on the branches, it looks like they're sideways. Why is that? Well, because the branches are mapped sideways. So let's just rotate them by -90 degrees. Or whichever direction it needs to go. And to select all of the vertices in cluster, just select one of them and then press Control L, so like so, and then just hit R and then 90. Let's take all of these, Control L, scale them up, and there we go. Our branches are looking a fair bit better. However, this tree looks quite smooth, so we're going to use a normal map. So let's bring in another image texture. So this is going to be bark NRM. Bring in a image or movie. Grab the normal map for this bark. And just like we did before, we need to set it to UV image. If we turn off that, we're not seeing it show up. Oh well. Check normal map. Turn off color. Turn on normal. Hello. You gonna update? Apparently not. It should be updating. Maybe the 3D viewport's frozen. Or we need to turn on GLSL. Haha. There we go. So now we have our normals clearly visible on our tree. That might be a bit too much, so we can turn that down or do whatever. And notice, as I was saying, right along that seam, there is a seam still. But because it's up on top of the tree, where our player hopefully is not going to be, no one can see it. Okay, so now that we have an effective trunk here with some larger boughs sticking out, it's time to get into the smaller branches. So let's go ahead and bring these lamps, hit M, Shift 2 to put them on the second layer, then hop over to the second layer, and this is where we're going to start creating our smaller twigs. And if we were to actually model out these twigs, it would take way too much, or way too many vertices. So we're just going to actually just use a texture. So let's bring in a plane, and let's subdivide it twice, or not subdivide it twice, but throw in 2 loop cuts. Let's bring these back. Turn off proportional editing if it is on. I'm going to pull these forward, pull these back. And right like that. Then pull out this vertex so that it kind of gives the bough some, or the twigs some shape. And now we need to go and grab that texture. So I've already created the basic material. Really all it is, just turn the specularity down to 0, turn on transparency, set the alpha to 0, hop over to your texture, and bring in your leaves color map, which I will provide you. It is from the open source game Yo Frankie, and set the coordinates to UV, which means we need to unwrap this. It's a fairly simple unwrap. Let's bring that in, rotate this, set it right on top of those leaves like so. And that's really all you have to do. And then turn on color and alpha. And then Blender will handle the rest. So it's pretty sweet, fairly easy way of getting this to work out nicely. So there we go, there are leaves. So if we play that, it looks like a branch. Okay, now the challenge is actually placing these branches all over our tree. So let's hit Alt-D to duplicate the mesh, or not the mesh, the object. The mesh is actually the same one on both of them, so let's move this over. I'll show you what I mean. When you tab into edit mode, it will edit both meshes because they're both sharing the same mesh data. So it just saves some space. Okay, so now that we have this, really all we do is we have to make it look like it belongs on the tree. So I'm going to, for ease of use purposes, I'm going to move the origin back to the start of the branch. So tabbing it to edit mode, hitting Shift S, cursor to selected with this back vertex selected, we'll move our cursor back here. Hit Control Alt Shift and C, click origin to 3D cursor, and that will move the origin. So now when we rotate it, it's rotating around the branch. So let's go ahead and stick a few of these guys up. So really all we want to do is just stick them up on here and just hit Alt-D every time you need a new one. And all you really have to do, because it's a game, is you have to make it look like it works. It doesn't actually have to work. So unlike a normal render, we don't need all of the branches actually stuck to the tree. So they can be sticking off. We're probably going to do a bit of that up on top. So this part is a bit repetitive, so once you get a few done, you'll figure it out fairly quickly. And I may just fast forward this bit. So there's a fairly low poly tree all ready to go. Yeah, only 600 some vertices. Now, one thing we want to do is with all of these leaves selected, we want to make them a single object. So let's take them. I'm going to hit Shift D to duplicate them and move them over to the third layer. And this is going to be the single object. So with one of them selected, hit Control J. And now it's all just one big object. The reason I did this, if you want to edit anything and you make it all one object, it's going to be not very much fun. So I'm going to plop those back over on the second layer. Take these guys, oops, put them on the first layer, and there we go. If we want to be able to use our objects that we have created, or our assets in an effective manner in our game scene, we need to put them into their own groups. And you'll see why later when we go to actually insert them. So with our rock selected, let's create a new group and call it rock. And then popping over to the water, oops, hit Control G and name it water. Save that. Pop over to the tree. By the way, I just found this demo mode and it's pretty cool. I don't like that it makes the player run, but yeah, otherwise it's pretty cool. Good job, guys. I like it. So with the tree, let's hide the tree base, take our branches here, and let's just make them all one object. So hit Control J. I'll go through and throw everything into one mesh. Hello. Let's hide these guys. There we go. So now it's all one object. Let's unhide everything. Select those, hit Control G, and name it tree. Let's save that. I want to make sure that I saved the rock. Stop. Apparently I didn't. So, rock, save, fantastic. Okay, it's time to go ahead now and start importing our objects into our game scene. How do we do this? Well, we can import them fairly easily by using links. So, linking. Control-Alt-O. And we've got our rock, our water, and our tree blends up here. Just come down here to Group and select the object. And we can just click that and drag it around. And of course we can scale it, rotate it, and do whatever else we want with it. Let's just plop a rock there. Let's bring in another rock. These are fairly large rocks, eh? But they're cool. I like them. They work. They serve their purpose. Okay, and let's bring in a few trees now. So hit Control-Alt-O, and now I'm going to actually show you why we used the groups. So let's do it with the water. So if we were to just select the object and it's a plane, if we just import that, we can't move it, we can't scale it, nor can we rotate it. So that's not really much use to us. I mean, it looks pretty, but it really doesn't do anything. So let's get rid of that, and we're gonna import it from the group. So select that water group, and now we can move it, rotate it, and scale it. So let's put our water in the pond, scale that up. That's looking fairly good. And now let's go ahead and bring in our tree. And that went absolutely nuts. Okay, Blender, what have you done for us here? There you go. There's a tree. Let's put a few trees back here on the hill. And now, if we press P, we have trees, rocks, and water in there. And then we can just adjust pretty much everything. And the links are actually fairly cool because it allows other people to work with you on your project. So say you have an artist who knows how to make trees really well, and what they can do now is they can go in and fix our trees and make them actually look really good. And they can do it, and it won't actually affect, they won't have to get your scene. They just have to use that tree file. So they don't have to come in here and actually manually go through each tree and fix it. They go to this tree file, they fix it, and it updates all of these trees on the fly. So that is why we use separate objects or separate files for holding all of our assets. I hope you have enjoyed this tutorial. If you want to see more in the future, please subscribe to BlenderWiz if you haven't already. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please like it and feel free to watch more tutorials while you are at it. If you have any recommendations or suggestions for future tutorials, feel free to leave some feedback in the comment section. Thank you for watching.